All right, so finding your non-dominant cross-legged seated position. And just spend a little time with that, making those adjustments, crossing at the mid-shins, seeing the thigh bones moving toward the floor, finding your sitting bones, adjusting your torso so your shoulders align with your hips. And then winding the shoulders and arms in a way that you feel your chest lift and spread. And see if you can keep the shoulders back as you join your hands together in front of your heart. Pointing your gaze toward your cheeks. Just bringing attention down to the lowest parts of your body. Connecting a little bit more deeply with the floor. Try to surrender the roots of your thighs, surrender the hips, sensing the weight of the leg bones. Feeling your sitting bones taking root into the floor. And with all of that foundation beneath you, just start to breathe lightness along your spine as you inhale. Just imagine you're filling up a small balloon between the sets of the vertebrae. And observing the breath as it comes and goes. Maybe the breath feels a little bit more free with the extra space you've already created in your torso. I'm just trying to get a picture here of how you're beginning your practice today, energetically, what the mind state is, emotional state, physical state. And maybe inviting an intention into your heart for this practice. And see if you can maintain the shoulders sitting back, the chest staying forward as you bow your head toward your heart. Releasing your hands, and when you're ready, lift your head, let your eyes gently open. And welcome. So we're going to do another back bending practice to kind of feel these elements of energy and kind of a mood lifting positivity that back bends can really yield. And we're going to work on our backs a couple ways. First with a bolster. So if you don't have a bolster, you can wrap two blankets together and kind of improvise that way. You'll roll the blankets, I should have said, so that you kind of can create a round, soft object like a bolster. In the first position, we're going to take the bolster to the upper back. So we're going to lie down on that bolster. We'll just call it a bolster, even though you might be working with blankets. And try to have the bolster right behind the sternum. And you might find that you need some head support. So take a block or anything that works to position the head so that you're kind of finding the back of the neck staying long, the chin and the forehead staying level. You can keep your feet grounded if your back isn't ready for extended legs. Otherwise, feel free to extend your legs. And you're going to raise the arms overhead, extending through the fingertips. And if your hands are touching the floor, there's not going to be anywhere to kind of to lengthen toward. You want to be able to continue to progress. So if you're not able, if you're touching the floor, you're going to want to grab your elbows so that you can kind of descend the elbows that way. So I'm going to have you stay there about a minute, minute and a half. I'll be right back. So you might notice your ribs are kind of jutting out toward the ceiling. Do a little bit of work to bring the inner front ribs toward each other and also toward the back body. And even though the tailbone might want to move toward the floor, see if you can move it into the body toward the ceiling. if you're holding elbows and now those are touching the floor, that's a good sign because you're making progress and opening the chest and shoulders. But again, you have nowhere to go if you're hitting the floor. So go ahead and create a goal post arm position. And that way you can also kind of start to stretch the chest a little bit more. Now you can bring your hands to your belly. You can slide your feet to the floor. And we're going to adjust on that bolster so that now it's going to be underneath the sacrum. And you don't need head support. The idea is to keep the head low and the chest and chin together. So this is kind of, if you remember cross bolsters, it's a little bit like a mild cross bolsters position where we get the chin and chest coming together like you would in shoulder stand or bridge pose. So take a moment to arrange yourself here. You want your hip points kind of being the highest point. And then you're going to extend your legs and have your feet at least hip distance wide. And make sure your toes are above your heels. So we tend to turn out with the feet here. So you want to roll the inner thighs down and have your kneecaps looking straight up to the ceiling. And then rest on the backs of your hands and use the pushing down of your shoulders to help bring your shoulder blades toward your chest. And again, it might feel like your tailbone wants to dive deeply toward the floor, and you're going to try to invite it toward the ceiling instead. And it can be helpful to really press the heels into the floor to help you do that. Keep your gaze pointed toward your cheeks. And again, try not to blast the front rib cage open. Keep a little bit of compaction there. That will support your back body as well. We'll just stay about 5 or 6 breaths. This is a really good one if you've been doing a lot of yard work or bending over in the yard, gardening, whatever. This is a really good one to kind of massage the discs in the other direction. We get so kind of bulging toward the back body with those discs, with all the forward bending we do this time of year. So it's really a healthy thing to do for your spine and the discs to counteract all that bending over. Now go ahead and step the feet to the floor. And you're going to kind of, however you can, assist yourself off of that setup and clear your mat. We're going to come back to our backs. And then you're going to set up as if you're going to go into bridge pose, but we're going to do a little flow sequence of cat, cow, and bridge all together. So you want to walk your feet in toward your sitting bones. Again, make sure your toes are right in front of your heels. And then extend your arms so your fingertips arrive really close to your heels. Palms are down. Press your shoulders into the floor. And then you're going to move your back into the floor so that you're minimizing that gap. This is exhale. This is the cat tilt. And then inhale, you're going to arch your back, even tip your chin up a little bit. And let's just stay here for a few breaths. Exhale, pushing that small of your back into the floor, turning your chin toward your chest. Inhale, chest and chin away from each other, arching your back. And just do it a couple more times on your own. So of course, it's a little bit limited by the floor. It's not going to feel like your table pose version of cat-cow. The next time you land in the cat tilt, where your lower back is pressed against the floor, you're going to stay there. And then raise your hips into bridge pose, holding for an inhale. On an exhale, walk your spine down. Inhale, arch your back. Exhale, press the small of the back into the floor and raise the hips. Inhale, hold for a breath here in bridge pose. And exhale, walk your spine down slowly. Try to traction the spine. Arch your back once you're down. In breath. Half of the exhale, we press the back into the floor. The second half, we lift the hips. Inhale when you're holding that bridge. Exhale, walk it down. Inhale to arch the back. Exhale and lift the hips. Hold for an in-breath. Walk it down. When the sacrum is resting, arch the back. This is the last one here. Flatten the back and lift the hips. Hold for an in-breath. And one last time, walk it down. Go ahead and extend your legs. And then put your hands under your buttocks. So you're resting on the backs of your hands. Your palms are pressing into your mat. And then you let your legs be kind of passive, like Shavasana legs. And then rocking a little bit, a little awkward, to try to move the elbows closer together. And then sensing the contact from your fingertips to the elbows, we're going to use that to help bring us into fish pose. On an exhale, pushing into the forearms, the fingertips, the palms. Shift your weight gently to the crown of the head, but it's not a lot of weight because your arms are doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. So keep digging in with the forearms, the palms, all that surface area of your hands. Keep the shoulder blades plugged into the chest. Relax your legs. Hold for a few more breaths. The next time you inhale, try to extend back to the back of the head. Bend your knees. Lift your buttocks away so you can free your hands. You might need to shake your hands or wiggle your wrists so you get your blood flow returning. And then we'll just do a little bit of a belly turning twist just to release the spine from that. So extend your arms sideways, palms are down, and then raise the legs one at a time with the knees bent. And you're going to kind of move in a semicircle or an L shape to each side, massaging your sacrum. So we move to the side on the exhalation. We come back to center on the inhale. So really try to move with the flow of your breathing, not some preset rhythm. Exhale to the side and inhale to the center. And when the legs go one way, you're really going to work some weight into the opposing shoulder side. So you can keep yourself really level across the shoulder girdle. And don't forget to pull up with the knees toward the shoulder line at the very last moment of that belly turning. Pull up to the shoulder line. And just do a few more. Good. The next time you come to center, feel free to step down. Shift to your side, and we're going to find our way to hands and knees, table pose. So we're doing all different poses than we did Monday, mostly different. And today we're going to come into upward dog, but we're going to come in from the plank pose, which I find to be a little bit easier than coming to upward dog from fully prone on the floor position. So find your way into downward facing dog. And just be there. So just taking some time to address the legs. They might not be ready to straighten. Your heels might be a lot of space from the floor. Just feel your first edge in your downward dog. Try to roll your inner thighs back. Try to compress your thighs from front to back. Move your chest toward your thighs. Move your shoulder blades toward your chest. And on an inhale, you're going to find your way forward to a plank position. On an exhale, take your hips toward the floor and your knees. Turn to the tops of the feet and don't hang in the shoulders. I see so many images of this when I, look at images of poses that people don't even have a neck. So really do your best to plant the hands, to lengthen the neck and to shoot the breast bone forward. It helps to look up because the spine will follow. Good. Come back to downward dog. So you can come right to table from here. Couple breaths. Feel your dog. Hopefully it's starting to feel a little looser, maybe not, and that's okay too. On an in breath, you'll glide forward to the plank position. Place your knees, flip to the tops of your feet, sink the hips. Turn the inner elbows forward to externally rotate the shoulders, extending your spine from the tailbone all the way up to the brainstem. Good, one last time. Pass through table, find your way to dog. Inhale, plank position. Knees down, sink the hips, flip to the tops of the feet. Remember to press your small toes down, lift your inner thighs up. Good. And now sit back in child's pose. Knees are wide, feet are together. Bring your buttocks as close to your heels as you can. Keep your arms extended forward. And just 5 more breaths. Tailbone toward the floor, sacrum away from the skull, shoulders staying with the torso, not floating into the fingertips. Using the arms to encourage a spaciousness to the sides of the torso. And now we're going to come into another prone position. We're going to do Dolphin Pose, which is 2 parts. So we'll break it up and we'll put it together. So you're going to, I recommend a blanket just to pad the pelvis and the hip bones. And then you'll basically come into your Sphinx position with your arms, except we'll make a little bit of a change once you're there. So the elbows are under the shoulders. And the change that we make is we turn the 4 fingers out 45 degrees so they're pointing to the corners of your mat, which means your thumbs should kind of extend the line of the inner wrist. So this is our position for our hands. That being said, try to keep your inner wrist pressing down. So it's kind of a fine articulation of keeping the inner wrist pressing down. So the first piece of the pose is just working with the upper body extension. On an exhale, you're going to press into the floor with your hands, scrub the floor, and try to extend the arms fully. Again, don't hang in the shoulders, which is very easy to do. So really pressurize the hands, winding the inner elbows to face the sky. Shoot the breastbone forward by really engaging the shoulder blades into the chest. And think about the flesh of the shoulders rotating from the front shoulder back around to the back shoulder by the armpit. So it's a really deep extension. Make sure your pelvic tilt is engaged. You're taking the tip of the tailbone into the floor. You're tipping the pelvis back. All right, go ahead and relax down. And now just be soft on your arms. So whatever you want to do with your arms, that's fine. We're going to do the legs now. So step your knees to the edges of the mat. And now go ahead and start to bring the feet together. Whatever you're doing with your arms, hopefully you have enough contact with the floor that you can still press down a little bit. But what we're trying to do is feel the extension kind of in the lower half of the spine. So we raise the legs, keep moving the pelvis, tipping it back, tailbone into the floor. Couple deep breaths. Again, so nourishing for the discs. Even when we're not out in the yard, we tend to have a lot of imbalance this way. So these back bends are really crucial to keeping the spine happy and healthy. So let's extend the legs now slowly, and we'll put it all together. So you can keep your knees wide. Your feet are going to be wide for a moment here. Go back to your Sphinx arms with the fingers turned out, the thumbs forward from the inner wrists. We'll add the legs in second. So on an exhale, pressurize your hands, extend your arms, rotate the inner elbows up, the shoulders back. And once that feels strong and solid, start to bend the knees and join the feet. 5 breaths if you can. Good. Extend the legs first. Start to soften the elbows. And then go ahead and make a little resting pillow out of your arms. You can step your knees a little closer. And then windshield wipe your legs back and forth, releasing anything that kind of is residual after that pose. Okay. So now we're going to work on hero pose. I know some of us dread when we hear the hero pose, but it just means you need it more. And there are lots of ways to make the pose more accessible. So again, we padding the shins with a blanket, propping the sitting bones with something substantial enough that your sitting bones touch. So we don't want something thin that we don't even, the sitting bones should meet whatever prop you're using. You can adjust the flesh of your legs, taking the calf muscle out to the sides and then rolling the thigh in the other direction. Try to find your heels sitting outside of your hips. So this is why it's sometimes called W sitting, because we have this W shape with the legs. And then make sure that you're looking back at your toes and you see them pointing straight back. We don't want them turned out to the sides. These things matter because the knees can get really misaligned, and that's never the intention. It's actually one of the best poses for knee health if we do it correctly. Last thing about the toes, make sure your small toe is sitting down as much as your big toe is. You might need your blocks. So now that you're perfected in your hero pose, you might want to get up and get your blocks. Sorry, I didn't say that sooner. And just begin once you're set up and you have adequate height under the sitting bones or you're touching down to the floor directly, then just place your hands to the soles of the feet and try to bring your shoulders above your hips. And engaging the shins down, but also think about your outer shins, which tend to pull up, and see if you can bring the flesh of the outer shins down. It might help you to think about pressing the small toes down. You might sense your tailbone is kind of flying back. We want the tailbone moving forward. So pelvic tilt, posterior pelvic tilt, lifting the skull, the rib cage, the pelvis. Good. So we're going to work with 6 actions of the spine here, which is somewhat of a distraction as we keep the legs going, because this pose being held for 5 minutes or more is usually kind of what we're shooting for. So let's raise the arms. I have my blocks on either side of me just in case I need them. On the exhale, we're going to turn to the left. Right hand comes to the left thigh. Left hand comes behind you. And if you have a block right there, place it behind you because you'll probably need it a little extra height to keep yourself upright. We don't want to lean back on a kickstand. We want to keep our torsos really vertical. And as you turn away from your right shin, pay extra attention to rotating that outer right shin to the floor. Press the right small toe down. Keep a sense of spaciousness running up the spine. Remember that idea of a little balloon between each vertebrae set. Fill it up with every in-breath. Maybe flip to the back of your right hand so that you can bring the armpit chest around if you're sensing you're kind of stuck. And then just finish your pose off looking over the left shoulder. Keeping your eyes really soft. And on an in-breath, raise your arms and come back around and out of it. On an exhale, we're going to go to the right. So take your left hand to your right thigh, right hand behind you. Now we're thinking about the outer left shin rolling down to the floor. So back bends are really a lot about opening front body. We can't bend back very significantly if the whole front body is kind of tight. And hero pose addresses a lot of the front body tension of the legs. So it's a really good one to include when we work with back bending. Okay, maybe flip to the back of the left hand to get the armpit chest around. Turn your head when you sense it's time, taking those last several breaths here. And then on an in-breath, raising the arms, coming back to center. And exhale, lower the arms. Okay, so now we're going to do lateral movement. We're going to press the left hand into the block next to us. Inhale the right arm up. And exhale, extending well to the left. Again, anchor into your right shin, right outer shin, right small toe. Back bends and forward bends are deeper when we work with twisting the spine and extending the spine side to side. On an in-breath, bring yourself up. And exhale, right hand comes down to your block. Inhale, left arm comes up. And exhale, extending to the right. So all of this extension doesn't matter if we don't connect with the floor somehow. So right away, go to that left shin. Try to anchor it into the floor. Try to keep your left shoulder attached to your torso, not flying into the fingertips. Wonderful. Inhale, raise yourself up, and exhale, lower the arm. Good. So now we're gonna switch gears a little bit. We're gonna keep the right leg in hero pose, but we're gonna come into Bharad Vajrasana, which is a seated twist. So the left leg is going to either tuck so that the left foot runs under the right ankle. So this is modified, which may not feel very modified at all. But there is an option too, which is less modified, which is to take the left foot to the right hip crease, more of a half lotus position. So that's the options. If you feel like neither one is really great, you can just kind of softly bend your knees and have both lower legs moving off to the right. Okay. So before you perfect that too much, you want to locate your strap. And because this is such an imbalanced pose as far as the weight of the sitting bones, I always recommend propping the non-hero leg buttock. So in this case, the left buttock, so that your pelvis is more aligned. One thing to note, if you're taking that modified version, your left toes should be pointing to the right, your right toes should be pointing back. So that's the position of the feet. And again, the left foot is under the right ankle. So we're going to be turning to the left, and I'm going to have everybody make a little loop with their strap. It doesn't have to be a tight loop. You can just pass your tail through your rings. If you don't have this kind of strap, you can just grab your right arm with whatever kind of strap you're working with and just wrap it around the arm that way. So even though you might be able to grab your arm from behind with your left hand grabbing your right arm, I still recommend using the strap, because once we carry the arm to the opposite side of the body, we lose a lot of length, and you might notice you'll need that extra length once you get there. So let's start with the length, and then if you're able to, you can always cut it down. Okay, so everybody's grabbing the upper arm, right arm, with left hand is holding the piece of the strap. Inhale strongly here. On your exhale, you're going to throw the arm over to that outer left thigh. And then crawl your left hand as close to your right arm as you can. So that's where we can kind of lose any excess we don't need. And you might notice, oh, I can grab my arm. Great, do that. So go ahead and kind of fine tune now. You're turning your torso to the left, but remember that right shin. Try to roll the right shin back to the floor so that we feel a sense of support. We're not just I call it balloons in the wind. We need some sort of an anchor. So you might have the back of the hand already pressing against the thigh. If you don't, you might want to flip to the back of the hand because it does help you bring that armpit chest around. Finishing an exhalation. Inhale. You're going to bring yourself out of it. You can take your strap away. And we're going to release the legs before we do the other side. So you can unsupport your left buttock. And then extend your legs out in front of you. Taking a seated Dandasana. Don't worry about propping the sitting bones. We won't be here that long. But just place your fingertips behind you, kind of tent up on your fingertips to help move your shoulder blades into the chest and anchor into your legs. Really press your legs into the floor. Try to minimize the space behind the knees and under the ankles. So we're going to come into Purvottanasana, which is kind of the inverted version. It is the inverted version of plank. So it's the back bending version of plank. So you're going to take your hands down to the floor now, attempting to get the heels of the hands down. I understand not everybody's got that sort of wrist flexibility. So you might prop underneath the heels of the hands if you don't have that contact. You might be able to get by without pressure down there. Fingertips are pointing toward you. You're going to sit back into your hands now, and on an exhale, raise your hips and try to press your feet toward the floor. Go ahead and inhale, sit down. Come back to Dandasana, give your legs a shake. We're going to do this a couple times just quickly, and then we're going to see if we can hold one for 5 breaths. So we'll do 2 more, just kind of up and down. Shake your legs out. Get your hands ready. So they're slightly behind the shoulder line because when you press up, we want them directly under because pillars are really stable. So go ahead and sit back into your hands. On an exhale, lift your hips, look up, take the tailbone toward the ceiling. Inhale, sit down, give them a shake. And if you have really intense wrist issues, you can do this pose on your forearms. So feel free to modify if you need to. Okay, last one, up and down before we hold it. So pressurize your fingertips a little more, then sit back into your full hands, your palms as well. Exhale, sit up. We're really defying gravity, good. Inhale, sit down. And take Dandasana. So the last one that we do, we're going to attempt to hold for as many breaths as you can. I don't want to dictate that number. I just want you guys to kind of sense and be there as long as you can and come down when you need to. So shake it out. Preparing for this hold on Purvottanasana. So come up on an exhale, it does help. You don't have to get the feet flat to the floor, but try to extend the toes toward the floor. Take the tailbone toward the ceiling, inner thighs down. The head does fall back at the very end. Try to keep a lot of pressure down in your arms, in your hands. Good. You guys outlasted me. Go ahead and have a seat when you're ready. Shake it out. All right. So we're going to do just a tiny moment of a hip opener. I'm on a blanket. I'm going to remove it. You don't really need anything under you for this. You're going to bend your knees and just sit back on your hands behind you. We're going to cross our right ankle to our left thigh. So you have full control over how much sensation you're going to give that right hip. So if you aren't feeling enough here, what you're going to do is make this more compact, meaning your left foot comes closer to you and your hands come closer to you. If you have too much sensation, it's the opposite. Your left foot pulls away, your hands back off, then you have a more obtuse angle. So just kind of find your sweet spot. Wherever it is, we want to make sure the chest stays forward, the shoulders move back, that we're not slumping or contracting the chest. So it does help to look up because your torso is angled. So your level gaze is actually up. And just kind of funnel some breaths into your right hip space. Over time, you might sense you need a little bit more, so feel free to make that adjustment to make that a little bit more of a narrow, compact pose. Good. And now go ahead and open that pose up a little bit so you can step your right leg down. To relieve the right knee, we're going to do a quick one-legged boat pose. So scoop the leg underneath the right thigh. Hug the thigh in toward your chest. Find your sitting bones. Bring your weight forward over your sitting bones. Extend your lower right leg. Okay, now back off with the help from the hands. You might completely be able to release. You might just have a lighter touch. Okay, 5 breaths. Nice. So grabbing behind the thigh, step the foot down. And let's go to left side of the hip opener. So you're going to find that perfect angle where you're propping the outer ankle on the right thigh. Your hands are as close as they can be. Your right heel is as close as it can be. You're coming to that first edge. Chest stays forward, shoulders stay back, eyes stay slightly up the wall. Giving those breaths to your left hip space, which might have a different tension pattern than the right one did. Make sure your knee isn't rotating because your hip isn't. So the hip is what we're addressing here, not the knee. If you're feeling it in the knee, you got to back off somehow. Good. Good. And now helping your left foot down. We're going to grab hold underneath the left thigh. Your right foot stays down on the floor. You're going to hug that left thigh toward your chest. Stay over your sitting bones. Don't collapse onto your tailbone. Shoulders back. Extend that lower leg when you're ready. And then play with less help from your hands. Maybe completely coming off, maybe just giving less support. 5 breaths. Hugging those hip bones toward each other, engaging the transverse abdominals. And then helping your foot down, sit forward, draping your arms over your shins, bow your head, and just take a few breaths. Single curve along the spine, quieting to the brain. Just let your head softly fall toward the floor. Just a very quick interlude of standing. So we're going to do 2 things standing. Crescent pose, and then see how that helps us out in warrior 1. So you can come up. Put yourself in mountain pose first, just kind of getting your baseline standing upright, kind of sensory experience, just sensing yourself here. Close your eyes. Taking the buttocks forward as you take the front thighs back, shoulders back. Planting your feet, connecting with the floor, sensing you continue, that you don't stop where the floor begins. And then let your eyes open and separate your feet so they're hip distance. I'm just going to have you grab your thighs from behind. And it's kind of right under the buttocks, and just kind of place your fingertips right under the buttocks. What you want to kind of suggest to the flesh of your legs is to rotate from the inner thighs out. So you might kind of crawl your hands slightly inward. And on an exhale, you're just going to kind of pull the flesh apart there and take a soft back bend. Just kind of imprinting the thighs with that intelligence. You can come up again. You're going to do 5 of these, exhaling back. And notice how it kind of gives a little relief to your lower back when you work the flesh this way. So it's kind of like you're pulling your butt cheeks apart, but it's right under the buttocks. Let's do 2 more. Exhaling back and inhaling up. Now let's do it again. So now we're going to take away that support, but hopefully the memory is still there. Clasp your hands, interlock your hands. Extend your arms, no bent elbows if you can eliminate the bent elbows. Pull your hands toward the floor and try to rotate the inner shoulder blades toward your chest. Inhale here. Exhale, hands toward the floor, chest toward the ceiling. Inhale, come up. Okay, so just little dips. Exhale again. Hands toward the floor, chest toward the ceiling. Inhale up. 3 more. Think about those thighs rotating out like you just helped them do. Wonderful. Last one, little dip. You can inhale to come up. Good. And then release your hands. You might shake out your arms. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to do crescent pose with the arms up as it's classically taught. And it is Urdhva Namaskarasana, meaning upward prayer pose. That being said, if you feel like your chest became concave when you brought your palms together, keep your hands separated, hip distance, or I should say shoulder distance. If you do have the prayer pose, try to straighten the elbows, and you might lock your thumbs, even though that's a modification. It does really help to kind of straighten the arms, I find. Inhale, lengthen through the fingertips. Exhale, you're going to now hold this crescent pose for 5 breaths. So you're arching back, your gaze is up, the midline of the buttocks is moving forward, the thighs are compacting toward the back thighs. You're rolling the flesh of the inner thighs out. Tailbone moving into the body, tipping the pelvis back, taking the arms back. Inhale, come up. And exhale, release your arms. If you can sustain the balance, the feet will come back together for mountain pose. Otherwise, feel free to keep your hip distance spacing. And then closing the eyes, receiving the breath, noticing any after effects. Good. And now we're going to jump out into warrior 1. So hopefully the length of the mat is running to the sides of you. And you don't need any props for warrior 1. And if you want to step out, feel free to step out right foot, left foot. Otherwise, try to grow the space between the feet without popping up too much vertically. You'll take hold of your hips and you'll pivot yourself to face right. So the left toes swing way in, the right toes are pointing perfectly out to that short edge of the mat. And then you're going to swivel your hips so they align evenly. Keep your legs straight and sense both legs moving from front to back. Anchor into your left heel. Raise the arms, and again, if you can, come into that prayer position. Taking the arms back. Inhale, lift your chest. Exhale, take the right knee above the right ankle. Even though you're looking up, give your eyes little soft pillows in the back of the head to rest on. Keep the gaze passive. Keep your temples descending. Soften your jaw. Inhale to lift out of it. You can 5-pointed star, turn to the broad side of the mat and jump or step together. And just holding mountain pose, couple breaths. Just dropping into those after effects. Sensation, breath, energy. Notice your stability here. And we'll set up side 2, letting the eyes come open. Jump or step out. Taking your hands to your hips. And then pivoting to the left. And not only are we aligning the hips, but make sure you're compacting them toward midline as well. Fully extend both legs with power, with purpose. Good, and then raise the arms. Press the hands together if you can, otherwise keep the hands shoulder distance wide. Inhale here. Look up, exhale, left knee over left ankle. Resting the eyes on those little pillows in your skull. Keeping a really straight right leg. Keeping the lower back happy with that pelvic tilt. Compact your front ribs, it does help the lower back as well. And on an inhale, pull yourself up and out of it, open to that 5-pointed star and jumper step back in. Again, dropping into mountain pose. Good. Okay, we're going to separate the feet, and before we come back to the floor, I just wanted to bring in breath of joy. It's an energizing breath. So a nice one to include in this energizing back bending sequence. 3-part arms, that's all inhale. 1 long exhale, forward bending. We dangle there as long as we're breathing out. We roll up on an inhale. We reset on an exhale. So 3 little sips of inhale through your nose, and the arms go front, side, up. And I sometimes say it in my head, although I think now I kind of have it memorized, but then we come down, dangle, exhale, 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 inhale, roll up, and exhale to reset. So it's sniff, 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 fold forward, dangle, 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 breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. When you're ready to breathe in, roll up, reset to exhale. We don't have to be synchronized, we'll just do a few on our own here. Let's do 2 more. The next time you come up, take a moment, make sure you're not dizzy. If you are, just stabilize yourself somehow. We're going to come back to our backs. And just have your block. And before we get onto our backs, we're going to set up a loop with the strap. If you know you can take Chatushpadasana with your hands clasped and your arms staying down and your hands staying down, if you know this pose and you know you can do that, then you don't need the strap. But for most of us, it's a great way to learn how we can stabilize into our arms and hands. So if you're going to use a strap, the loop can be as wide as the shoulder circumference. So when you put your wrists in, you'll see your arms are mostly parallel. Okay? You can just set that to the side. So we want to work with the block. It's called spine-wise, meaning it's running with the spine rather than crossing the spine. So it's the kind of the vertical plane of the block. And you might use the highest height. You might also use a medium height. For some of us, depending on your back today, you might use the lowest height. So you have to kind of sense where you need to be. I'm usually somewhere between medium and tall. But again, try to have the block placed on the sacrum and tailbone, spine-wise. So it takes a little effort to bring yourself up onto that plane of block. And then you're either going to make that clasping hand position. If you're doing with no strap, you want to make sure your pinkies touch the floor, that you're not floating your hands in space, because then you have no contact. It's not going to be functional. Then you want to use the strap. If you're using the strap, try to have the backs of your hands on the floor so that you can keep the shoulders the way we want them. Your chin and chest are getting a nice opportunity to connect. And then from there, you're going to start to raise your legs one at a time, starting with bent knees, and then extending the legs up. And you're supporting those legs really with the efforts of your upper body, your arms, your hands, your chin and chest locking together, the back of the neck elongating. And now start to bend your knees and step your feet down one at a time. And then you're going to begin to extend your legs. And you're going to be resting on your heels, your feet slightly wider than your hips. And do not let your toes fan out. So pull your big toes toward each other. I keep telling myself I'm going to invent a big toe rubber band just for this pose. But actually, it really should come from your own effort. The props just teach us how to get there. So you want to kind of sense your kneecaps pointing up, the centers of the thighs pointing up, the inner thighs rolling down, tailbone moving to the ceiling. This is kind of the grand finale pose here. So really try to do your best and breathe. And begin to step your feet back to the floor. Unlock your hands or free the hands from the strap. And then lift up enough that you can take your block away. Walk your spine down. And then stretch your arms out to each side. Palms are down. We'll cross our left leg over our right leg. And then we're going to shift onto our right hip and let the legs fall to the right. So the left hip should be above the right hip now. Use your right hand to hold your legs there. And if your left shoulder is unhappy, just take the left hand over the side waist. Otherwise, keep the left arm extended out, and at this point, turn the palm up. Roll your head to look left to complete your twist. And now just settle in, 6 to 8 breaths. You might kind of meet some resistance, just breathing through, combing through the tension with the breath. And see if you can gently ease back onto your back body and uncross your legs. Take a moment to arrange yourself evenly on the floor once again. Regrow the arms in each direction and cross right leg over left. Tucking the left hip under you, the right hip above. Letting the legs soften toward the floor. Your left hand can help holding the legs down. Turn your head to the right. And either draping the right hand over your side body or turning the right palm face up. If your legs want to shift as they settle, let them shift. If we don't, then the legs get kind of stuck and then the spine gets stuck. So just let your legs soften wherever they are. as they shift and settle. And just acknowledge any resistance or tension you're meeting here. Just see what happens when you wait it out. As you're ready, you're going to help yourself onto your back once again. And this time, once you've uncrossed your legs and you straighten yourself out, just sensing if anything else needs to move or stretch or be addressed before we come into final resting pose. And when you're ready for that pose, you can just gently, quietly start to set up. You might take something under the knees, under the head, over the body, over the eyes. Once you're lying down, just taking a moment to arrange the limbs and the trunk and the skull. Closing the eyes. Just begin by letting the body really truly meet the floor. Softening your face, your jaw, your tongue. That little area between your eyebrows, softening the skin there. And then deep below the skin into the center of the skull. Observing your breath. Full body surrender. Taking a breath in for 4 counts, slow and steady. Let's see if you can release the breath over 6 counts, slow and steady, like there's a leak in a bike tire. After your next long exhalation, find your way back to easy breathing. And just take a few moments there, just being with the breath. Start to move your fingers and toes. Start to gently rock your head. Maybe let your ankles and your wrists move. Maybe then starting to let the knees and elbows bend. And very gently and slowly like this, you're going to find your way to your side. And when you're on your side, just make sure to stay a few moments. We move from the corpse pose to the fetal position. I do feel every time I practice yoga like there's a little bit of a renewal or a rebirth. I like to think about moving from the corpse pose to the fetal position as that process of yoga. When you're ready, you're going to help yourself up to seated, really minimizing effort so that you don't disturb the state of the brain or the state of the body more than we have to. And when you're upright seated, just like you began, finding that perfect, good space pose, joining the hands together in front of the heart. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose and let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. Okay, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope to see you soon. Next week's restorative. Yay! We'll see you soon.
Bye.